everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the Launch Station. And today we're going to be going into a topic of career path and growth for professional services teams. And with us, we have a guest who has a lot of experience in precisely, building up professional services teams, setting the career path for an org, etc. So we have with us today Raj Lal, who's Director of Professional Services at Mimecast, and he's been in project management, professional services, project operations over the last 15 plus years. So welcome to the show, Raj.
Hi there. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So Raj has extensive experience across places like Livingstone, Sapphire Systems, AvePoint, etc. And today we're going to get into a few topics around career pathing for professional services teams and also managing global teams. But before we get into that, just to learn a little more about Raj, what are your top personal goals for 2024?
Within Mimecast Professional Services, I've got great aspirations for where we're going in the future. I love to spend more time with the organization as we develop more of our partner strategy. Going forward, that is one of our key initiatives going forward. Reviewing our SKU optimization and what we're currently offering as services. But as we've talked about, this is going to be the focus of today's podcast, but really ensuring I'm growing and developing my existing team to make sure that they're the best in the industry as possible.
Awesome. That sounds great. And, I think it makes sense for us to dive a little deeper into the kind of team that you manage today at Mimecast. Can you tell us a little more about the type of work the team does, the size of the team, etc., just to set context for the audience today?
Yeah, so the team I currently oversee is across EMEA. So we're based predominantly out of London, but we've got fantastic holdings in South Africa, Dubai, Munich, and Hilversum in Amsterdam as well. And that team that I oversee in EMEA comprises around 40 consultants in our professional services capacity around this email security, but also around the data services side as well. And of course, we're strategically aligned to professional services project managers and the PMO associated to it. A lot of the work that we do is involving new customer onboarding, but additional consultancy services as well. And as mentioned, that data migration aspect of things.
Sounds great. And you mentioned there's a team that's across different countries in Europe, and you also mentioned South Africa. Leading a global team, what are some of the challenges that you've seen?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. With the team, for example, being so spread across the globe, we find that cultural awareness across the organization can be very different. How you interact with members of staff from the South African office can be very different to how you talk to people from mainland Europe. It's great that they have different aspirations and different viewpoints, and it's about able to harness that to then give you that strategic advantage going forward. Being a very large organization, we spend a lot of time collaborating together, and it's about bringing those teams together to get the most out of them. Especially, I think, given the tenure of the team, and apologies I didn't mention it before, but that team has gone from new starters who've been here for maybe 2 or 3 years to some people who've been in Mimecast for almost 15. So as you can imagine, they've seen a lot of the ups and downs, they've seen things happen and work before, and of course a vast amount of experience which we need to harness to go forward. And of course, with the role change that different people may have, it's about how we harness that and move them forward so we strategically align to where the business is going as well.
Understood. Can you elaborate a little more about the kind of cultural differences you would observe when working with teams across different countries? Any examples that come to mind?
I think a lot of the time it's very much around how they interact maybe with management. We find that certain cultures will find it difficult to engage with senior managers, for example, whereas maybe in London you see a lot more of an open door policy because it's very much open space and hot desking. I try to feel as if, being one of the directors in Mimecast, that I don't sit behind a closed door. I'm very much sat in the office with everyone else, and I want to spend time getting to know what they're working on and also what are the pain points for them as well. So culturally, it can be sometimes a little bit difficult to get people to open up because they feel as if they are difficult talking to a director, or maybe it's a case of they're always talking to you and you only get one perspective, and you want to make sure you're talking to the whole workforce.
Got it. Anything you've done to create forcing functions for the team to engage with you?
We try to do a lot around bringing the team together in terms of that team building, that nature. It's very hard with a geographically spread team. We actually did a virtual escape rooms. So we tried to do something there. I try to visit the team in different regional offices as much as I can. But also maybe as a positive or a negative, depending on how you look at it, I try and organize skip level meetings with a lot of my members of staff. So I try to reach out to 3 or 4 different people every month to get their insights, because I want to know what's really happening on the ground, and also build that relationship with them as well, so I can feel as if they can approach me with anything that they have to make things better overall for the business.
Understood. In addition to that, from a global perspective, how do you ensure there is the right accountability, controls, and alignment across teams? And if people are working on projects together, how do you ensure that all of that is working well in a distributed setup?
I think I have to draw upon a lot of the project management experience I have. I utilize a lot of the documentation quite heavily. So we make sure we follow up with our email documentation. We have a central storage for a lot of our shared documentation utilizing SharePoint and our existing CRM systems as well. It makes sure that we have a set of templates that everyone's following, and that we can continue to have not only regional unity, but also then globally, can we ensure we're delivering the same level of services to every customer across the globe? Of course, it's very difficult because of COVID and such that you don't have too many meetings, that you're bringing the teams together. It's about finding that right balance as well, because often enough you can take people away, and it's not just the 30 minutes to have a meeting, it's the prep time before and after to carry out any actions, or making sure you're having a more efficient conversation. And of course, I'm very lucky with my management team that I've got a strong team amongst them. So it's easy enough for us to delegate work amongst ourselves, and I'll take on actions as well. But we're able then to support each other as we grow and move forward.
Understood. Talking about keeping things consistent across the global organization, not just your practice in EMEA. Tell us about how decisions are made, how the way of working is set. Like, what do you get to decide for your teams versus what needs to be common and one way of working across the company itself?
Yeah, we actually just finished a 2-year-long project reviewing our professional services practices, because it felt very much that we needed to be more globally aligned. And through doing that, we looked at how the different regions operated. There are often nuances around how you do tenders, for example. Certain regions say that you only do tenders after a contract's been awarded, and you go through that sales process. Others very much like to do things beforehand and have everything in place before sales take place. And of course, you have to pay attention to those regional differences. In particular, government, I will call out as a key example. But by bringing things together and being as common as we can around documentation, our scoping processes, our technical validation as well, it's such a pivotal thing to do. We ensure that we're aligning to the services that we're offering. I think also when we talk about how we bring things together and we look at the global organization and decisions being made, it's how does it impact not just our department, but the other organizational elements as well. For example, lead times. If we put a certain lead time in place, what does that do to the sales organization, as well as potentially customer success at the end of that as well? So that entire customer journey has to be taken into account.
Understood. That makes sense. And what about having a path for ideas to move between the different geographies? I mean, I know you mentioned the one-time exercise that happened to align things, but from here, if there is incremental innovation coming from one team, is there a common process to say, hey, there's this new thing that we're trying out in this geography, we want to make it global? How does that get decided? Whether it's process, governance, whatever else.
go back to some of the processes that we reviewed, it's very much about running those pilots within that small team. It's a case you have a great idea, and we're actually doing some great stuff already. But then how does it work in a smaller theatre? If you're working with different business functions, how does it impact them? And then if you can run that at a sustainable time frame, ensuring that there's positive business outcomes, there isn't any cost or additional cost to the business, for example, it's then replicating that globally. And it's making sure it's done in a controlled and documented manner as well. It's very easy to say, one process, great, we're going to throw it across the globe and everyone's going to follow. But therefore, you don't find the strategic pitfalls that you need to be careful of.
Understood. And, yet another topic related to people is, how you staff the right projects and initiatives with the right folks. What do you look at from what you need for that initiative or project to succeed versus a team member's aspirations? How do you balance that?
Within Mimecast, what we're currently doing is building a lot more of a closer relationship with our sales functions. I think traditionally, sometimes it can be seen that sales do one thing here and it's almost thrown over and then it's landed in the post-sales functions afterwards. What we have done and been very successful in doing over the last few years is changing that corporate culture and working closer together. So, for example, my line managers within professional services are regularly meeting with the head of sales functions to talk about the pipeline. Not only to understand what type of projects are going there, but also what can we do to support the sales function to make sure that they are asking the right questions, because great, we have the sale, but then with downsell and churn be such a prominent conversation because everyone wants to keep their customers and keep them happy. We want to make sure that level of quality is consistent through the customer journey. So we have those regular conversations, which is great. It also means that when we know about projects coming forward, we can also plan our resources accordingly and say, okay, that's coming in a month's time. We know this person has an aspiration to grow and develop in that special technology. So maybe we can allocate that resource as well. Of course, there might be shadowing resources you need. So it's a little bit of an extra piece of work. But that's where I think the line manager is pivotal to not only delivering the work, but also growing the team as well. And I think as we expand on that, it's about tracking the personal growth and development for individuals. So we have things like skills metrics and competencies models, which allow us to measure who needs to grow and develop in what areas, so we can allocate them to that work as well. And I think on a line management level, I encourage my team to talk to their individual contributors at least twice a week. One around their one-to-one regarding workload, so we can map that out to your original question, but also how do we grow them as individuals for their personal growth? Because it's very easy to say we're focusing just on the work we're going to do and deliver for the business, but individuals need growth and development as well. And by having those two separate conversations, you can have a much more rounded and successful consultant within the organization.
Understood. And you mentioned skill metrics, and before that, in a conversation we had in the past, you had also talked about how you came up with this career matrix for the team. And I'm curious, what were your learnings in crafting that career matrix as well as rolling it out to the team?
Back in 2022, we have something called our employee survey. And we looked at the results from that survey. And I was actually new in the role of being director within the professional services function. And what we found was a lot of low scores around the career part for professional services consultants. The perceived lack of opportunity. We don't know how we grow talent within the business. I don't know where my next career move is going to be. And these are pretty common things because unless it's heavily documented and it's written out for somebody, it can be difficult to know where to go next. And we're all facing that journey as we grow through our careers. We want to know where's the next step for us. So what we needed to do was look at a globalized strategy to say, where can our individual contributors go? But how do we get them there as well, whilst also driving that level of retention? Because I don't want to lose them to outside the organization. And of course, I want to make sure they're happy within professional services. So what we did is we looked at something called a career roadmap. So we illustrated in a diagram format to individuals, this is where you are now, and this is where you can go in terms of your career. Now, it could mean you go from a consultant to being senior to being principal, but also open up the opportunities of within professional services, you can go into different roles as well. You're not just on this one linear path. And I think that really helped people understand where they could go next. But more importantly, how do we grow them as individuals to get to those points? It's great me saying you're now a consultant, your next step is senior consultant. But how do you get there? And I think what we had to put together was this very comprehensive skills matrix, which it's quite heavy. It's a very large document, around 170 areas of growth. But it means that we're looking at, for example, Mimecast policies. We're looking at our technology, our products, but also the softer skills that we expect consultants to have. And we're saying to them, show me the ways that you can illustrate that you are demonstrating or you're an expert in certain areas, and that allows you to grow. So we've got the career roadmap, we've therefore got the model they can use, and it's very much that's a tangible metrics to follow. But what also I need to look at is how we're developing them in other areas. For example, the proficiency around mentor and leadership. Now, I was a big fan of having mentors because I've been fortunate to have some really great ones in my time. And so I wanted the team to also have mentors as well, because only talking to your line manager or maybe just people in your team gives you one perspective. But talking to people outside of the business function, it's great. It gives you a different perspective to work on and grow and develop.
Understood. And how did the team react to this when you rolled out the career metrics? Were there any causes for confusion in the team? Was it easy for them to comprehend all of those 170 different areas which were put in front of them? How did they react to it?
There's a lot of topic of conversation, which I fully embraced. I think it's fantastic that people were able to talk about it, raise questions, because I think it's very easy for someone who implements a solution to say, I've done it, perfect, we don't need to go back to it again. I very much look at it as a live document. If something changes, especially the email threat landscape changes, the skill sets we require of our consultants also changes. So therefore, that document has been updated a few times to reflect the technology and remove some historic technology as well. What also means is that they're able to say, well, where do I need to focus? But it's therefore something that helps managers have the conversation on a regular basis to say, let's look at this document together and identify areas of growth. So it not only supports them, but it supports the line managers and their experience as well. Because it's very easy to just look at your individual contributors and not look at your management team about how they're growing and developing. And of course, some people thought it might have been beneficial. Others may have thought it was not so beneficial to them and their growth, but it's about finding that right balance for everybody. And that's why the document was so comprehensive as well. It's that broad spectrum, as I mentioned, of staff who I'm currently looking after. Some brand new, some have been there almost 15 years in industry.
Got it. And the way you built this document, is it very black and white for people to see it and know where they stand, to sort of self-evaluate and say, hey, here's where I am today? Or does it need them to work with their manager to understand, hey, on this soft skill, here is where you really are, here is what it needs for you to become an expert at it, etc.?
It starts off with the individual filling in a form to where they believe they are. And that's the first stage. It therefore then requires the manager to review that document as well, because what we did find is that individuals are actually marking themselves quite low. They said, oh, I don't have a lot of exposure in this. And we're like, actually, you're underselling yourself. You're being quite modest. So we need to have somebody do that review. And that's why managers do it alongside some of our technical leadership as well, to then find that balance and support individuals to say, actually, you need to change the scoring to be a bit more reflective of your true skill set. What I would say is I use it as a very strong guide for individuals when we talk about growth, career development. And the thing is, it's not just purely binary elements of work. For example, soft skills like presentation skills, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, they aren't things that are often binary that you can prove on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. You have to have exposure and experience of doing those things. So that's why you might need a few more attempts at it, but it's good for the manager and the individual to have those regular conversations and share what they're working on to improve that skill set.
That makes sense. And I'm curious, when we roll out an initiative like this, does that also result in people overly focusing on, hey, what do I need to do to get to the next step, like climbing the ladder versus, just doing great work for the customer? Do you think there is some sort of side effect of rolling out an initiative like this?
I actually find this a bit of a balance because you find that it shows the individual traits more. For example, those who are driving up that career ladder, who really want to proceed forward, embrace this opportunity with both hands because they've got something now they can work towards. I will say that this is just one of 3 different areas I focus on as an individual for their growth and development. For example, how did they project themselves as, for example, that level of consultant? So if they're looking to be a senior consultant, are they showing the rest of the business that they are a senior consultant? It's not just mine and my line managers, it's the sales leads, it's our customer success department, other supporting functions. Do they look at that person and ask them questions and reach out for their help because they view them in that way? But also a job description, which ties in very closely, is also a document which I ask the team to refer to, because in that it explains certain tasks they need to carry out, which is not just about implementing a new customer, but other activities they should be involved in.
That makes sense. And Raj, beyond career metrics, anything else you're doing for your teams to equip them for future roles in a global environment?
Yeah, very much as I said, we looked more at the mentor piece because I think it's really important. But what may have happened and fallen a bit to the wayside is around the enablement of the individuals. So we talk about that skills matrix and how do we grow and develop the team. I've actually said right now we need to bring the teams closer together when we come in regularly into the office. But if I'm going to bring you into the office in a hybrid working environment that we're in today, I want them to see benefit of it. So, for example, I hope we have fortnightly sessions around enablement. We'll have special guests come in from within the business, but actually we'll have some of the more tenured individuals share their knowledge and experience with the rest of the team. So in a very controlled environment, in a safe space, everyone can ask those questions and they can grow and learn from each other. As I said, we're having people dialing from around the globe, some of them 1 or 2 individuals who can't really reach out to the same pool of people. Of course, we can use Slack as much as we wish, but having them in a call together can really embrace that. I've also brought in, through collaboration with my leadership, training budgets as well. So we can look at external training that is available. And we are driving forward with our departmental enablement teams within Mimecast to ensure that we can utilize their skill set, their library of enablement to then support the team and grow them as well.
I think that brings me to a question I am curious about. When it comes to training budget, external training, especially in years like 2023, 2024, is there a lot of pushback in organizations? How do you make the case for, hey, we do need this training budget, even in a time like this, and we want to make sure that we are helping our team level up? How do you put that forward to finance and leadership to ensure that you're able to invest in the team?
I think you really have to make sure you've done a solid business case for what the benefit of the enablement is. All enablement is fantastic for everybody, but if you're going to purchase external and it's going against the business budget, which we all know is very tight at the moment, you've got to have a strong business case and also show the benefit the business will receive as a result of that enablement. So, for example, we are now in the middle of a period of change within Mimecast where our consultants are going to become more vendor-driven as a consultancy group. We're going to look at different styles of engagement. It means I have to drive the capability and the consultancy capability of my team. So I need these special things to drive enablement. API is a big area we want to focus on. As I mentioned, we're doing a lot with our partner community. So we need to have that breadth of knowledge at a different level versus just saying we need to do another course just for the benefit of having it as a tick box exercise. And I'm very fortunate that our technical leaders who've got a lot of experience are able to share their thoughts of what good courses are. for example, the lab environments that come along with those. And we're actually just investing in a new one next month as well.
That's great to know, and good for your team. We'll move to our last section of the podcast, which has a few quick questions from us, like a rapid fire round. What's one piece of content that really inspired you?
Not being a big reader, it's very much around the movie side of things in terms of content. I watched The Pursuit of Happiness, although an old film, it's still a favorite of mine. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a Will Smith film around his journey from being homeless to becoming a very successful businessman. And I think that resilience and that drive to continuously move forward when all odds are stacked against you, I think it's a very powerful message. And that clear vision of perseverance is something that definitely sticks with me.
You mentioned people on your team having mentors a few times. Do you have a mentor yourself?
Yes, I do. I'm very fortunate to have a fantastic mentor within the organization. He's probably the happiest person I know, which is a great benefit because I think sometimes the stresses of day-to-day work, you need that person you can have a conversation with and be uplifted by. I think not only has it benefited myself from a personal development point of view, but that individual being outside of my organization itself within professional services has improved my network as well and my circle of influence, because I look at things in a very different way, having had that conversation with them. Benefit of having that mentor, but I can't reiterate it enough, is that level of confidence and confidentiality in the conversation, and that's personal support. And like everybody, we're always learning. So you're always looking at different things and how you've reacted in a certain situation, and was that maybe the best way? But having someone to share that with and bounce those ideas off can help you learn, or actually reinstate that you were doing the right thing to begin with. So it's really important.
Got it. Who do you think we should bring on the show next? Do you have any recommendations?
I think given where my journey is within the organization now and what we're currently working on, I'd love to see a bit more of the strategic partners that you have with professional services. So for example, the value-added resellers, the MSPs, the disties. How do they see professional services and what do they believe we should be doing more of? Is there anything that we can collaborate better and embrace that relationship to do more work together? So it'd be interesting to get that different perspective looking in.
Great input. We'll try to get someone like that on next. Last question for the day. What advice do you have for other PS leaders?
I would encourage them all to have as many conversations with their team as possible. Obviously, don't fill your diaries up with back-to-back meetings. You won't get anything done. But I have found great benefit of those skip-level meetings. Talking to the individuals doing the work and not just relying on my management team, it gives you a different perspective. And I think being in the leadership roles that we're in, our job is to make sure our teams are doing the best they can. And I think if we're not having those conversations with them, we're maybe not doing to the full extent of what our job entails.
Awesome. Great inputs all through, Raj. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all these great inputs with us. And thanks for taking the time to be on the show today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And listeners, if you're interested in creating your own career metrics, probably you should connect with Raj on LinkedIn and reach out and get his inputs. We are also going to share what we've done at Rocket Lane for career metrics for our professional services team. We'll link that up in the blog that comes out along with this podcast. So that could be a starting point as well to create your own. Thank you all for tuning in and listening into the show today.